G'day and welcome back to another episode of Discover Cars. Today, you join me to take a closer look at the C8 Corvette and we answer the crucial question, is it coming to Australia?
We love football, meat pies, kangaroos.
Chevrolet Corvette.
That's football, meat pies, kangaroos, and
Chevrolet Corvette.
Now before I begin, I see a lot of you dropping by and thank you so much for showing the love on the previous videos we've done. If you like these videos, consider subscribing and leaving a like because it really helps out and lets me know that you want to see more of these. Now with that out of the way, we're going to jump into the crucial part of this video, which is all about the C8. And as we've all seen by now, the Corvette C8 has been an absolute smash hit in the US. When it was revealed to the public that the Corvette C8 would cost $60,000, Corvette dealers could not get enough orders down. The order books quickly flooded out and the 2020 C8 was pretty much sold out within a few weeks. And why was that? Well, this was Corvette's first mid-engine sports car, and that's a big deal to Corvette purists. But it also made people a little bit nervous as well because it had to answer three questions. How does it drive? How does it handle? And ultimately, what does it look like? And that last question was answered at that press conference when the covers were taken off the car and it was finally revealed that a McLaren had a baby with a Ferrari and a Corvette got mixed up in that because it looks drop dead gorgeous. It's not only one of the best looking Corvettes because the Stingray, which is the new entry level into the C8, is also one of the quickest as well.
60, here we go. Oh my. There you go.
From a mid-mountain LT4 V8 motor, the Corvette C8 produces 396 kilowatts, that's around 495 horsepower, and 637 newton meters of torque, which is insane from the 6.2 litre naturally aspirated V8. And that meant this Corvette could rocket to 100 or 60 miles an hour in about 2.8 seconds, which is just absolutely absurd. 2.8 seconds in a car that costs nearly half as much as a Porsche 911 Carrera S, which is just mind-boggling to think you can get that level of performance for $60,000 US. Now this is all thanks to an 8-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox, which was a bit of a sore point for purists because a manual was not offered at launch, which is sort of what the Corvette purists love to drive, is a manual with their front engine V8. And you've just switched out where the V8 sits and you've put in an automatic gearbox. Gonna make people question what the Corvette C8 is all about. But with that level of performance and with reviews saying how engaging the 8-speed is to drive, that's quickly hushed any talk of a manual being needed. But then as journalists quickly got their hands on this and started to test out pre-production models and finally getting to actually test production models, there was a small issue with the V8 motor. Now, the thing with a naturally aspirated motor is that the more you rev it, the more power you get. The more you rev it, the better the sound gets, and ultimately, more of an engaging driving experience because you feel more connected with the car that way. Now, turbocharged motors don't really rev out all the way because they sort of have a limit, and that limit's around 6,000 to 7,000 RPM, and that's when normal production cars with twin turbocharged setups, for example, like the Porsche 911 GT2 RS, has a red line of just over 7,000 RPM. Now with a naturally aspirated motor, you can get close to 9,000, even very close to 10,000 RPM in some motors, for example, which just sounds incredible. But then this motor in the C8 had a weird rev limit as discovered by the smoking tire.
The red line is 6,800, which is the lowest revving mid-engine car you can buy.
At 6,500 RPM, which is just a bit of a weird and stunted rev range for such a good looking, exotic feeling, and ultimately great performing car. Now it would have been cool to see a high rev range and get a similar sound of the likes of the Ferrari 845 Italia and the Ford GT350R, but it doesn't matter because we suspect that high revving engine should arrive in the C8 ZR1, which is rumored to have a flat plane crank V8 derived from the C8 race car, which sounds heavenly. The C8 isn't an unpractical car either, seating two people comfortably and can carry around 356 litres of cargo, which is insane for a mid-engine car. That's enough to put a set of golf clubs in the back and a few bags in the front, aka the front trunk. Now compare this with a Porsche 911 luggage space, which is 132 litres, and with a Ferrari 488 luggage space at 170 litres. That makes a C8 look like a minivan in comparison. And while the C8 continues to sell out over in the US, the big question is when or if the C8 will come to Australia. Now, ever since the death of the Holden brand, we've been concerned about the future viability of importing cars like the Camaro, the Silverado, and ultimately the C8. Since Holden dealers are shutting down, Holden Special Vehicles now have less space to sell imported cars. Now, Holden Special Vehicles, aka HSV, is now in the middle of a restructure of their approach to the Australian market. Since Holden is dead, expect a name change from HSV to something like GMSV to better suit the core business practice of this Australian brand, where GMSV will be General Motors Special Vehicles, which makes a whole lot more sense. Now, HSV will continue to import and convert General Motors vehicles to right-hand drive, but haven't confirmed that the C8 will make it here to Australia. However, these photos were posted by HSV themselves as they got their hands on a C8 here in Australia for local development, which is pretty exciting, and probably plans for how they approach the right-hand drive conversion were made. And also, just to note that when you have the engine in the middle, you don't have to worry about a firewall in front, which is actually one of the most expensive parts of a car to manufacture. It's everything around from the cabin to the engine. So with that aside, we're hoping that it's a lot easier to convert this car from left-hand drive to right-hand drive. Thanks to a recent pandemic and of course the death of Holden, an air of uncertainty still hangs around the C8 and if it's ultimately viable here in Australia. GM does not have much confidence in the Australian market, and that's because it had absolute record low sales before Holden died. And unfortunately, the Camaro has not seen the same success as the Mustang here down under. In 2018, the Camaro sold around 550 units here in Australia, while the Mustang sold 6,412 in that same year. And that's really due to the price and scalability of HSV's conversion business. And it hasn't been as successful as the Mustang here. And that's because they produce those right-hand drive Mustangs from the factory, which cuts down on cost when going to sell, and you don't have to pay for expensive labor here in Australia. So they had the one up in terms of price and of course their ability to mass produce. So that leaves us with the C8 Corvette. GM executives and HSV both have hinted at a sub $200,000 price tags, and most likely somewhere very close to $170,000 drive away. And if that's the case, the C8 will still be considered a very niche car, with few buyers being able to fork out that amount for a brand that no one really recognizes here in Australia. And if that's the case, the C8 will still be considered very niche because there are a few buyers out there that are willing to fork over that amount for a brand that doesn't really resonate here the same as other brands like Porsche, Ferrari, McLaren do here in Australia. However, that price would flag a few buyers who are on their way to buy the new Cayman GT4 or the new Cayman GTS 4-litre or the Audi R8 rear-wheel drive or the base 911 Carrera, because all those start over $200,000 for a unique rear engine setup. So the UK has recently got its pricing and specifications for the right-hand drive version of the C8 all confirmed, which gives us a hope that the C8 actually may be cheaper than $170,000 if it can be converted from right-hand drive from the factory. So compared to the likes of AMG, Audi and Porsche, Aussies might not get the Chevrolet and Corvette brand. They might not resonate with the history that Corvette has over in the US and the racing history there, and also everyone knowing someone that might have had a Corvette, their experiences with a Corvette. We don't have that here. Corvettes are owned by weird car club owners, and they're quite a niche and very, very cliquey sort of group. If things work out for the C8 in Australia, expect it to land here sometime in the first half of 2021. And thank you for watching. If you haven't checked it out already, you can see my video on the AMG GT Black Series, which is up here. However, we did get some new footage and of course the ultimate release of the GT Black Series, which just looks absolutely stunning. But if you want to check out their video, it's just up here. And like I said, consider liking and subscribing if you did like this video and want to see more of this. My fingers are crossed for the C8 to come here in Australia, and I'll see you in the next one.